And we back. Man, this is a very intense and exciting conversation. But we're grateful that this is not just some theoretical stuff that we're trying to do. We're trying to get down to the heart of some stuff so that practically we can be the best human beings that we could possibly be. So everybody who is chiming in on Facebook and stuff like that, we appreciate you so much. You are helping us to do work and make this work real. This is just not, this ain't just vain, conversation. We serious about this. We know people who exist in certain contexts that are unbecoming to the human condition. So it's our responsibility to do the best we can to make sure that our living conditions are better. And one of the ways we do that is by deconstructing the ways people try to interpret and associate and appropriate terms and terminologies and theories and ideas on specific people. Yeah. So look, it's a lot of people who I want to shout out, but we probably can't shout out everybody. If we forget you, then just pray for us. But I wanna lift up a segment of a recent blog post that I submitted to the Rhetoric, Race, and Religion blog. Shout out to Andre Johnson and all of the Rhetoric, Race, and Religion bloggers. G. Joyner is one, and all of the contributors want to shout you out. And there's so many people doing wonderful blog work. The Feminist Wire, G. Joyner G. Joyner with his Rainbows and Lilacs is doing stuff. I know several people, but I was asked to respond to the Boston massacre by Brother David Waters of the Commercial Appeal and the Faith in Memphis panel. So we want to shout him out. And I actually wrote this blog piece for a different outlet that may be coming out in the Commercial Appeal sometime this week. But I was trying to analyze what may have been the cause of something like this. And similar to what we've been talking about, I believe that it is about a issue of power. So what I said in the blog is that what our culture is centered on now is power. And this conceptual power is mythical at its core, but it has substantial manifestations in the societies in which we make our abode. The thirst and desire for power has been the springboard for our quest for separatism that quite often leads to acts of violence. You do know people don't usually commit violent acts to people who they know well, but more so people who they feel like there's some separation or disconnection to. I'm not a psychoanalyst, but I do perceive that whoever set the bomb off in Boston did so as a means of communicating his or her power over those, quote, subjects who became victims. Historically, power has been taken through violent force. This is as American as apple pie. Historically, we take power through violent force, even if it is done in the name of God. And with this in the backdrop, it seems to not only be conducive and convenient, but moreover necessary to seek power through violent means. For one to bomb innocent and unarmed people, whether it be in Boston or in Baghdad or Afghanistan, which also, as we said earlier, had bombs dropped there at a wedding, is to protect an expression of power over project an expression of power over those people who have been victimized. Violence, Brother John, is often the voice of the unheard, but it is also the frequency by which oppressive empires speak in order to maintain their platform of privilege. So I know those were some quarter words. We will give ties
to Pastor Professor because he started preaching.
Right. Well, we're gonna give you some nickels for them quarter terms, though. Right. So this whole notion of the frequency at which the empire speaks, the codes, if you will, the sensibility, the norm. So to appropriate the term terrorism is to support a certain code that is attempting to sustain the empire as it is.
Anti-American.
Yeah.
And we've been discussing the fact that somehow we're going to work this way back around to what we consider domestic terrorism. We've been dealing with the fact that it seems like when Americans commit terroristic acts, and when I say terror, I just mean violent activity when it's unwarranted. Mm-hmm. I don't care how bad I've allegedly treated you without physically harming you. There should not be a physical reaction to my social, financial, economic action, right? So when you do that, you become a terrorist. I think it seems like Americans, when they commit these violent acts, they're not deemed terrorists. And if they are, they put that adjectives, right? That adjective domestic, opposed to these young men, the one, rest in peace, the one who's dead, and the one who's held up in a hospital. Only God knows what's really wrong with him. We haven't seen him since. Yeah. But being connected with Islam, right? Muslims seem to automatically be deemed terrorists. And mind you, there's no signifier. There's no international terrorists.
Right.
Not even if they're in this country living and working and residing and garnering income from this nation. they're not called domestic terrorists. They're just called terrorists. I think because this is a majority Protestant Christian nation, that anything, apparently religion rules. I think you mentioned about, depends on, you can be a Christian, but depends on what your idea of Christ and his works were. But I think as long as you're under that umbrella, it's fine with them. Because I want to get back to that. I don't think these young men who did this in Boston are any worse than the young men that are kicking in doors, drive-by shooting in Memphis, D.C., Baltimore, Houston, Philly, L.A., and Chirac.
Yes.
Chicago, Illinois. These, in fact, some of those characters are worse than them. I think it's a response, definitely. During the break, if you guys are watching Ustream, you would have seen us discuss what, it would be premature to anybody to try to figure out what is the motivation, right? Yeah. What's the premise behind this violence? I always say, if you're living here, it could possibly be a response to whatever you feel or deem oppressive. And we were talking to an audience member, and I asked him, is the guy that shoots up the project, does he have a motivation? Is his motivation the same? Is he a terrorist, or is his motivation the same as those two brothers were? I believe so. I believe that they might not be connected to a terrorist or a Muslim terroristic cell. They're trying to connect them with Al-Qaeda, right? They might just have been here, they were here over 7, 8, 9 years. They might just be discontent with the idea of the American dream, and they weren't actualizing this American dream or realizing this American dream, so they responded to it. Everyone knows to get America's attention, what do? Respond violently. Why is it that the Newtown disaster, which was a massacre, why wasn't he deemed a terrorist?
Right.
Why wasn't the young man out there in Colorado last summer in the Colorado movie shootings, why isn't he deemed a terrorist? They were Anglo-Saxon American white boys who probably were Christians. And why are those Negroes in the hood that are shooting and killing? They probably go to some Baptist church. Yeah. They're not considered terrorists. I think whenever you're antithetical to America's religious beliefs, which is strange because America on the whole, in my opinion, doesn't seem that. We're not Bible-thumping people walking around here for the most part. We just claim this set of Christianity like a gang, right? But we don't represent that set. Shout out to the Bloods, Crips, GDs, Vice Lords. No shout out. It's opposite day. We don't fuck with you on here. But I think as long as you're not antithetical to the idea of Christianity, American Christianity, right? I think you'll never be deemed a terrorist, right? Because if you're a Christian, you have to believe in our ideological beliefs, right? You have to subscribe to them, shouldn't you?
But I don't want us to try to disconnect the relationship between the Protestant ethic and the white Anglo-Saxon ethic as well. You understand what I'm saying?
In America, it's separate. I mean, it's integrated.
Right, and that's what I want. That's what I want to say. So it seems to me. So I'm defining terrorism as any violent act that is perpetuated as a means of obtaining power, right? So somebody is trying to proclaim some type of power, whether it's street credibility or whether it's the
within whatever,
right? Whether it's the sustainment of an empirical tradition, right? To try to use violence as a means of obtaining or sustaining power, that's terrorism.
I take back. I go with diction problem. I don't go with obtaining or sustaining power. I think the terroristic acts, or whatever we're going to deem them, I think it's just it's a voice against. Because if you look at it, for the most part, there's been no terroristic act that has touched American soil that you can say helped procure some type of power from the U.S. government at all. 9/11 didn't do it. Those years ago in the 80s, all those hijacking the planes from the Pan American flights and all that, the Iranians hijacking planes, none of that really took any power or even international article positioning from the United States at all.
Right. I don't
think it's obtaining and sustaining. I think it's just.
It don't mean it works. Yeah. It don't mean it works. I'm talking about the intent. If your intent is to terrorize,
but they're trying to obtain power.
Yes.
Or just get your attention.
Well, but the purpose of getting the attention, I don't think they want to know, hey, y'all recognize us? Yeah, we recognize y'all now.
Yeah,
so now we finna come bomb y'all. No, I think that the purpose of doing it is the terrorist, whoever he or she may be, believes that the violent act is a means of them obtaining or sustaining some type of power. It may not work. You know what I'm saying? So just like, let's look at it from a domestic violence perspective, which is which is domestic, which is terrorism, right? So whoever the perpetrator is seeking to use violence as a means of procuring or maintaining
and violence to create more fear within you.
But the purpose of the fear is to maintain the power. It doesn't always work, right? Because you got people who rebel, you got people who leave or whatever. But I think when you're trying to use that as the method to obtain or sustain a certain level of power, then it is terrorism.
But if we're going to say that, I still disagree. If we're going to say that's kind of, really can't compare, I guess, domestic terrorism, mate relationship, familial domestic terrorism to this nationalistic thing, because they're trying to paint this as being nationalistic.
Yeah.
No one ever. The worst war we've ever been in is a self war, which was the Civil War. So I can't say that there is no type of obtaining power. They're not trying to procure power. I think it's literally, I'm letting you know I'm here, and this can happen anytime. We are breeding fear in the United States. Okay, 12 years ago, they're literally, the media is literally trying to make this comparable to September 11th. And it's not.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's not, because we still, 11 and a half years, time to make them a little more scared, let them know they're not safe. I think it's a fear thing, because you don't know where this thief in the night is. All you know is it's a thief in the night trying to take lives, trying to take your security from you. I don't think it's any type of idea of obtaining power, because you're not obtaining power, particularly in what they're doing, because it's not making any damage. 9/11 caused damage, but in the end, I remember maybe a year later, once they declared war, I felt safe again. Not that I was really scared, but I didn't feel like, I never ever have had an idea that, oh my God, Muslim terrorists or international terrorists, they're going to push their agenda here and they're going to take us over. Particularly with what just happened. 3 people? No. They didn't look like terrorists, because I had gotten fooled by the brown-skinned, tawny-skinned Muslim to be the terrorist. But when they came to be European terrorists, and what they could be doing is further validating that, hey, this Muslim, Islam is really a monster or a beast to be reckoned with, because it can even sway people that come over here trying to look for a better life that look like you. Yeah, because if we didn't know their names, them boys look like Kip and Biff for the most part. Maybe even Italian American is worse. We about to go on break, y'all. We'll be right back. Episode 8, Pastor and the Professor, Real Talk. Real people, righteous talk to real people.
Yeah, real talk, real action, real righteous, real crazy.
2 and 2. That we all brothers, not 'cause things the same, because we like the same color, and that's gray. Now that's main. Can't burn his cross, 'cause he can't afford the gasoline. Now if a Muslim woman strapped with a bomb on the bus with the seconds running, give you the jitters. Just imagine an American-based Christian organization planning the poison water supplies to bring the second coming quicker, nigga.